Like I said, when you look outside, you see the vegetation is green because it is our summer season. So, which means these 3 leaves, they are green in color. All of them, they are green. But, my learner at home, they are those with different colors. They are those leaves with different colors. Not all of them are green, but most of them, they are green in color. So, which means the others that are not green, some of them you find that they are red in color, some are yellow, some are white around the outside part. For example, this one is not green, but it is brownish in color or reddish in color. So which means it is not green. This one is yellow. When you see it, it is yellow. So the last one, it is brownish, or it is green outside and brownish inside. Some of them, they are completely brown, which means the color green is not complete. It is having other colors. This one, it is not green or fully green in color. So which means this feature, external feature of a leaf, color tells us that some of the leaves are green, some they are not green, but most of them, they are green in color. Some of them, they are whitish around. For example, you are going to find that the edge of the leaf, the edge, it is whitish in color. So that's all about color. Number 2, we are talking about size. We are talking about size. So when I talk about size, we mean some are small or others are big. For example, some of our leaves here in my picture, they are big or large, whereas others are small. So this picture tells us that these leaves, they are big in size. They are not small. They are big in size. So in this picture shows us that these leaves, they are small. You see, these leaves, they are small, which means leaves, they are not in the same size. Some are big and some are small. So, for example, leaves of maize plants are bigger than those of bean plant. I hope, my learner, you know maize. So nowadays we are planting maize because it is the summer season. We are growing maize. So this leaf is from the maize plant. It is bigger than this one of a bean plant. So which means these leaves, they are not in the same size. They are those which are very, very small, and those which are very big. So which means leaves of plant, they are not in the same size. They differ in size. That's all about size, my learner. So number 3, we are talking about texture. That is our number 3, texture. So texture, my learner at home, means when you touch at something, how do you feel in touching that something using your hands? You are feeling, that is texture. How is that thing feels? So some of our leaves, they are hairy. Some of our leaves, they are hairy. They have bristles or spikes, while others are smooth or rough. For example, here I'm having these 4 pictures. This first picture, we see these leaves having a whitish color on top, which means it is having some hairs. This leaf, it is having some hairs on top of the leaf. And our second one is having also small hairs. When you look at it, you see some hairs, small hairs, which means when you touch it, you are going to feel the hairs. Number 3, we are seeing this one. These leaves, they are very smooth when you touch it. They are very smooth. The last one, this one is rough. You see, it is having something like a small squares around, which means it is rough. So when you touch it, we are going to feel the roughness of the leaf. So some of our leaves, they are oily or shiny. They are oily or shiny, while others are waxy. Which means, for example, this first one, it is waxy, or the leaves are waxy. Our second one, when you see it, you see that it is shiny. This one and also this one, it is shiny. You see the shining here. It is shiny. So some, when you touch them, are oily. That is texture, my learner. So the last part, we are talking about thorns. Some of our leaves are having some thorns around. You see here, this first picture, you see these are thorns. It is having some small stones. So also this one is a leaf. It is having thorns. And this one is from aloe. It is having thorns around, which means when you touch these leaves, you are going to feel the texture, or you are going to feel what is around them, which means these ones are having thorns around. So texture, we are saying, how do you feel when you touch at those leaves? That's all about texture. Let's move on and talk about our fourth external feature, which are veins. So my learner at home, veins of leaves, they differ. So some of our leaves, they are parallel, or they are having parallel veins, which means the veins are aligned in a parallel lines, or in parallel lines. For example, when you see at these leaves, this is from a maize plant. This one is from maize. So when you see also in this one, the veins, they are clearly aligned now. They are parallel. When you are talking about parallel lines, we mean these lines, they do not meet, or lines that never meet. They are parallel. So they do not meet. They are parallel, or lines that never meet. So these veins are aligned in a way of like these lines. They are parallel to each other. For example, when you see these ones, it's having parallel lines. So some of our leaves, they have a networked veins, or they are networked veins, which means the veins are lateral. The veins are lateral. When we're talking about lateral veins, we mean these veins, they are from this part, which is the center, this part. They run from the center to the edge, or to the end of this leaf, which means they are network. They are lateral network veins. Also this one, it's having network veins. These veins are not parallel, but they are lateral, or they are networked. So these leaves, they are from a dicot. So leaves that have network veins, they are from dicot plants. Leaves that have parallel veins, they are from monocot plant. Mono means one. Di means two. In our previous lesson, we did talk about seeds. Mono means one, which means the seed has got one cotyledon. And di means two, the seed has got two cotyledon. So let's move on and talk about the differences now. What are the differences between the monocot and dicot leaves? Monocot and dicot leaves. So we're going to look at the leaf structure, veins, and leaf stalk. So in monocot leaves or in monocot plants, we're talking about leaves. Don't forget, my learner, we're looking at leaves. These monocot leaves, when you look at the leaf structure, it is long and narrow, which means this leaf, this one, it is from a monocot. So the leaf is long and narrow. It is long and narrow. The dicot, it is broad. This one is from a dicot. The leaf is broad. It is broad. It is not long and narrow. This one is long and narrow. So let us move on and talk about the veins now. Veins. These veins of monocots, they are arranged in parallel lines. So when you look through this leaf, we see that it is having parallel veins. The veins are parallel to each other. Veins of monocots. While the veins of dicot, they are arranged in a branching network, which means they are lateral. Branching network. We mean they are branching like this. So the last one, we're talking about a leaf stalk. Monocots, they do not have a leaf stalk. No leaf stalk. Or the leaf stalk is not clear or visible. So this part, it is not clear or visible. Some of them, they do not have the leaf stalk, while others, the leaf stalk is not clear or visible. So under dicot, the leaf stalk, these leaves are attached to a main plant with a stalk, which means it has a stalk. This is a leaf stalk. So these ones, they are having leaf stalk. So I hope you do understand about the differences between monocots and dicot leaves. So now let's move on and discuss the parts of a leaf. The parts of a leaf. So this is my leaf, my learner at home. So let us look at it. It is having parts. These parts will mean the external part. When you see through the leaf, we see the external features. So not the internal, the external one. So the first part we're going to talk about is the apex. This part, it is the apex. So number 2, this part, we call it the leaf margin. Leaf margin or the margin. So number 3, this part, we call them veins. This part, we call them veins. So this part which is endemically, we call it the midrib. Call it the midrib. So, and also this part, we call it the leaf stalk. This is our leaf stalk. So now, let's look at the functions of these parts of a leaf. Veins. So we are saying veins distribute water. They distribute water to all the cells in the leaf, which means the leaf is having cells, but we can't see them through our naked eyes. But we can. These veins, they distribute water through all the cells that are found in the leaf, and also sugars from the leaf to all the parts of a plant. Sugars from the leaf to the whole part of a plant, which means the leaf manufactures food for the plant. This food is then taken through the veins to all around the parts of a plant. Number 2, we are talking about midrib. midrib, this part which is in the center, this part. We're talking about this part that is in the center. So this part carries water from the stem, to the leaf cell, or it carries water from the stem to the leaf, and also sugars from the leaf to the whole plant. So this midrib is thick and it is found in the middle. So veins branch off from the midrib. These veins, they branch off from the midrib, which means the midrib carries water from the stem to the leaf. So leaf stalk attaches the leaf to the plant stem or branch. This leaf stalk attaches the leaf to the plant or branch, which means a leaf is attached to plant stem. It is from the stem. So that's why you are saying it attaches the leaf to the plant stem or branch. So we are saying now these apex, margin, vein, and midrib, they form what we call a leaf blade. Leaf blade. It form what we call a leaf blade. All this part, they form a, which means this leaf, the whole part of this leaf, we said it is a leaf blade, or we are saying it is a leaf blade. So the whole surface of the leaf, it is the leaf blade. So our apex now, this part, the apex, it is the tip of a leaf. This is the tip of the leaf. Leaf margin, we said, or we are saying, it is the edge of the leaf, the edge. Leaf margin, the edge. We're talking about this part, the edge. So that's all about the parts of a leaf. I think you do understand what we mean about the parts of a leaves and its function. So now we're going to move on and discuss or talk about the classification of leaves. Leaves, they are classified into two main groups or two types of leaves. The first one, we are saying it is the simple leaf. The second one, it is the compound leaves. We are having simple leaves and compound leaves. So what are simple leaves? Simple leaves, these leaves are made up of one leaf on a stalk. They are made up of one leaf on a stalk, which means it is made up of one leaf. One leaf. We're talking about one leaf on a stalk. We said this is a leaf stalk. We're having one leaf. So these are simple leaves from one leaf on a stalk. They are not many, but it is one. So those are simple leaves, or these are simple leaves. When you see leaves like this, they are from a simple leaves. Number two, we're having what you call compound leaves. So these compound leaves, they consist of many leaves. They consist of many small leaves or leaflets. It is made up of leaflets. We are saying leaflets are small leaves that make up a compound leaf, or a small leaf that makes up a compound leaf. So when we see these leaves, they are from a compound leaves, which means in this part we are having the stem. They are from the stem. This is the stem, and these small ones are leaflets. Which means they branch from the stem and having small leaves called leaflets. And also in this one, it is from a stem. In this part we are having a stem. So these are the leaflets. These are the leaflets. So which means these are compound leaves. So compound leaves, they consist of many small leaves, while simple leaves, they consist, or it is made up of one leaf on a stalk. So that's all about compound leaves and simple leaves. So I'm having a question here, my dear learner, for you at home. This question, we are going to do it together, or you are going to do it on your own. So number one says, study the leaves and describe the physical features. When you see these leaves, they differ, or we're having picture A and picture B. So describe their physical features. We said when we're talking about physical features, we're talking about the external part. So this leaf in A, it is having what? Okay, thorns. This one, it is having hairs. Which means these two leaves, we are talking about texture. That is external feature number one, texture. And list the other three external features. We're having, we said, we're having size. Number two, we are having color. And the last one, we're having, this one is texture. So draw the diagram to show the difference between a simple leaf and a compound leaves. We are going to draw, my learner at home. This is my simple leaf. We are going to continue with the question on your own, my dear learner. So to sum up my lesson, today we talked about leaves. We said leaves are having external features, which are color, size, texture, and veins. The leaf has got different parts, that is the apex, midrib, veins, and leaf margin, which form what we call a leaf plate. Then also we're having the leaf stalk that attaches the leaf to the plant stem. Leaves are grouped into two. We're having simple leaves, which are made up of one leaf on a stalk, and the compound leaves has a cluster of leaflets on one stalk. I think you do understand, my dear learner at home. Thank you very much. So keep on studying at home. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kumalo. Like you said, we're hoping that they enjoyed your lesson. It was really, really informative. Thank you so much. We're hoping to see you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. From ones and from twos, please get closer to your screens, because up next is a religious education lesson with Nomsa Nsibande. We'll be right back after this.
To return my son to me. I'm going to go get him.
Ow, it hurts! Hey, I haven't even touched you yet. Stop being a baby. Kandimba! Get back here! Kandimba! Kandimba! Where are you?
What's with that face? You don't feel well? How did your interview go?
Bad. Really bad.
Well, I'd like to have a cup of coffee, please.
Because I want to help you out,
Your
I really
father
can't.
won't let you.
It's just that at this time, the sales of the store don't justify hiring another person, Auntie.
But if that's the issue, I could work on commission, Sarah. I already proved to you I'm a good
Look,
salesperson.
I'm really sorry, but jobs don't just pop up because people need them.
Maybe you should find someone who feels as lonely as you do. Someone who knows how to spoil you and likes it.
Jive nome kanjani and forget what bothers you the most. On this stage, our dancers fire in their eyes come alive. They explore the fires that lay deep within with different dance moves. On this stage, they claim their space and who they are with sparkles, freestyle, silent and storm dances. All this and more with our vibrant and beautiful presenter Nikki. Jive nome kanjani season 4 coming soon on Eswatini TV. Sibuko semaswati.
A very warm welcome back to Eswatini TV. You are still tuned in to Home Study, and a very good afternoon if you have just joined us. My name is Nogwazi Dlamini. Right now we are doing Form 1 and Form 2 Religious Education with Nomsa Nsibande, who is already with me in the studio. Also joining me in studio is our sign language interpreter, Nomcebo Dlamini. How are you doing, Nomsa, today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. I will not ask you what you said I mustn't ask you, so relax. The way that you're looking at me right now. Okay, so today we're doing the mass exodus, right?
Yes, we're doing the mass exodus.
Okay, what are you expecting your Form 1s and your Form 2s to have learned by the end of the lesson?
I hope they will understand God's power and sovereignty over the Israelite story.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Form 1s and Form 2s, I hope that you are ready for your lesson. And a reminder about our social media platforms. We are live right now on YouTube and on Facebook. If you have any questions, please feel free to use our WhatsApp number. Nomsa, you may please begin with your lesson.
Okay, thank you. Yes, good afternoon, my dear learners at home. As introduced, I'm Ms. Sibanza. So today's lesson will be looking at the mass exodus. So let us start by looking at today's lesson objectives together, my dear learner. So by the end of the lesson, I hope you'll be able to first outline the 10 plagues that God used against Egypt to release the Israelites. So secondly, you must relate what happened during the Passover. And also you must explain the importance of the Passover meal, my dear learner. And also you must describe the mass exodus of the Israelites out of Egypt. And then also you must explain how God provided for the Israelites in the wilderness. And finally, my dear learner, you will have to explain lessons from the crossing of the Red Sea. So we will look at the lesson finally. So now, my dear learner, let's start with a quick recap of the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we established that God had seen and had the affliction that the Israelites were going through in the foreign land of Egypt. So he had called Moses. He had appointed Moses to go together with his brother Aaron to release his people, the children of Israel, in bondage in the land of Egypt. So that is what we established, my dear learner. As you can see in the picture that we have here, how badly these people were treated. Yet God had a covenant with their forefather Abraham, that he will be their God and they will be his people, meaning that he will look after them. But look at what they had to go through. So God had their cry and he wanted to release them from such bondage. So when Aaron, and as you can see in this verse slide, when Aaron and Moses went to Egypt to meet with the Pharaoh of Egypt, you find that it wasn't as easy as they anticipated, because the Pharaoh was stubborn. You find that he would not want to release the Israelites. So that is what happened. It was difficult. That is when God decided to unleash 10 plagues upon the Israelites, so that the Pharaoh would release upon the Egyptians, so that he would finally release his people. So today's lesson, we will start by looking at the 10 plagues together, my dear Lena. I hope you can see this slide. It has got some pictures of each plague. Let's start by defining what plague is. A plague in our language, we normally call it a curse, or it could be something like a calamity or a pandemic, something that will badly affect people. So these are some of the plagues that we'll be looking at, and we will look at them in detail. If you would go with me to Exodus 7, we will start from verse 14 together, my dear Lena. So let us all go to our Bibles. Mine is in tabular form, as you can see on my screen. Let's go together on my screen, but you start from verse 7. From verse 14, chapter 7. Let's go together, my dear Lena. So you'll find that what is important for today's lesson, my dear Lena, I must guide you because we have many chapters together. So what we'll be looking at is the description of each plague. What was that plague? And secondly, you must know the impact of each of these plagues upon the Egyptians. And finally, you must also know what the response that of Pharaoh, or Pharaoh's reaction to each of these plagues, my dear Lena. So now let us start together with the first plague. So in the first plague, you can see that the water turned into blood. So you find that Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. They found him by the river Nile, and they told him that if he doesn't release God's people to go for a 3-day journey together to worship God, the water in all Egypt would turn into blood. But Pharaoh was stubborn. His heart was hardened. He would not free God's people. So what happened after that? You find that the water in all Egypt turned into blood. So you find that the rivers, the pools, even the water they had kept in vessels, all turned into blood, such that this water became foul, and also the Egyptian loathed to drink such a disgusting water that was bloody. And also you find that also the fish in the river Nile, all of the fish died just like that. So it was such a sad thing that happened. And what did Pharaoh do about that? Pharaoh called his magicians to come and perform the same trick, and funny enough, they were also able to turn water into blood. So Pharaoh was not moved. He would not let the Israelites go. So, and then God released another, the second plague upon the Egyptians. So what was that plague? So frogs infested Egypt. So you find that there were frogs everywhere. Perhaps you are like me, my dear Lena, you are scared of one frog. You can imagine if there were frogs everywhere, such as it was the case in Egypt. There were frogs in their bed chambers, in their kitchen, everywhere. There were heaps and heaps of frogs there. So as if that was not enough, Pharaoh decided to call his magicians again. They came and performed the same trick, and he was not moved. He would not free God's people. And then what happened? In the third plague, God released yet another plague upon the Egyptians to finally release God's people. And that was gnats, which in our language we call lice. You can imagine how terribly a dog that has got lice would try or to wrap itself all over and over again. But you can imagine when there are lice all over Egypt. So that must have been terrible on people, on animals, and everyone, my dear Lena. So that was the third plague. And what happened was that again Pharaoh called his magicians and asked them to perform the same trick, but unfortunately this time they couldn't manifest any lice or gnats. And then you find that the magicians also told the Pharaoh that this shows that it's a hand of God upon these people, which is Aaron and Moses. But still Pharaoh hardened his heart. He would not free the Israelites. And then in the fourth plague, let's look together, my dear Lena, there were flies all over Egypt. So the ground and the houses of Egypt were filled with swarms of flies. So what did Pharaoh do about this? Pharaoh decided to call Moses and Aaron, and he told them that, man, you can go and worship your God. But what you have to do, you have to do it within the land. Don't go very far. You say you want a 3 days journey to worship a bit far. But you find that Moses and Aaron would not agree to such an arrangement. Why was that so? In the last lesson, we said that in Egypt, they are idol worshippers. They are polytheistic in nature. They worship many gods. So in that way, you find that they could not worship their God Yahweh in a place where they worship idols. So this is why they wanted to go outside. So they did not agree to such an arrangement, my dear Lena. So what happened next? In the fifth plague, you find that Aaron and Moses told Pharaoh that if he doesn't release the Israelites, all their livestock will die. You find that in Egypt, they are farmers. They also keep livestock like we do in the country, and the livestock is very important to them as well. And Pharaoh still did not release the Israelites. So you find that the flocks of cattle, camels, their donkeys, their horses all died just like that. So it was such a sad occurrence that befell Egypt at that particular moment. As if that was not enough, Pharaoh still was stubborn. He would not release God's people. And what happened next? You find that the next plague were terrible boils. Not just the boils that we are used to, but the boils that were breaking into sores and covered all the people and also the animal. You can imagine how much you hate a dog that has got sores. But imagine in this point, my dear Leonards, it was the people and also the animals with those boils that were breaking into sores, and all the people of Egypt. But what I want you to note, my dear Lena, is that the people, the Israelites, were not affected at all. The Israelites were living in a place called Goshen. Let's write the place here together. So the Israelites lived in a place called Goshen. Goshen. So in this place, no one was affected. So amongst them, they were definitely not affected, all of them, just like that. So, but all the Egyptians were badly affected, my dear Lena. So let us continue, my dear Lena. So you find that in the 7th plague, still Moses and Aaron told the Pharaoh to release God's people, or else there would be hail all over Egypt. But still he would not free God's people. So what happened? There was a hail that struck all the crops in Egypt fields, and also man and beast died, and it also struck down every tree and plant. You can imagine how Egypt looked so bare without any plant, my dear Lena. So that is what happened in Egypt. So as if that was not enough, still Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He would not free God's people. So in the 8th plague, there were locusts that covered all Egypt. So it filled their houses, and it filled their even their fields. And that is how it was badly. It was destroying everything that they had. And also it went and beat down all the trees that were trying to grow at that moment. And then Pharaoh decided to do something about it. He called Moses and Aaron and told them to release all the Israelites, only men, to go and worship their God. And he said that all the children and the women should remain in their flock. But Aaron and Moses told Pharaoh that if they go, they have to go, all of the Israelites, to worship their God. And also they have to go with their flock as well. And then, so in other words, they did not agree to that arrangement. And then in the 9th plague, you find that darkness befell Egypt. So it was not just the darkness that we are familiar with, but instead it was thick kind of darkness as you can see here, it befell Egypt that they could not even see one another. It lasted for 3 days. So that was the moment when Pharaoh decided to call call Moses and Aaron. He said to them, let them go, but only they should go with their flocks. They should go and leave their flocks behind. So their flocks should remain behind, but all of them can go and leave their headsmen also to look after their flock. So, but still Moses would not agree to this arrangement. I'm sure at home you are probably wondering why Moses would not go with all the people. Let's at least leave the flock. You must understand, my dear Lena, that the Israelites were people who worshipped God. Part of their worship entailed sacrifice to their God. So you find that they would offer burnt sacrifice. So they might, they knew that they could need certain kinds of animals during their time of prayer in the wilderness. So, but and then Pharaoh, who did not know about God, would not understand such a thing. So still his heart was hardened. And remember, in Exodus 6 verse 1, God had said to Moses and Aaron that Pharaoh, he will force Pharaoh to release the Israelites. He will use his strong hand. The same Pharaoh who doesn't want to free God's people will definitely force them out to go finally. So now God decided to release the 10th and final plague upon the people. So what happened there, my dear Lena? You find that before this plague took place, God decided to warn Moses to tell the Israelites to protect themselves against this particular plague. So in the next slide, we'll be talking about how the Israelites were protected from this particular plague. But remember that we said that all the other plagues never affected any of the Israelites because they were living in a place called Goshen, that God shielded and protected his people in that particular place. So, and then let's look at the final plague. So this was the death of the firstborn males. So of every animal or every man or in Egypt, all of them died. So there was a great cry in every home because at midnight an angel of the Lord came and smote all Egyptian male firstborn. And of course there was a great cry in every home because every home does have their firstborn. So you find that firstborns are very important in their families. So indeed there was such a great cry, and understandably so, my dear Lena. And you are probably asking yourself at home, why did God become so unfair and release such plagues on all the other people who had not committed any wrong before God? I want you, my dear Lena, to understand that our leaders are very important because they make decisions that would affect the whole entire nation. That is why it is very important for us to pray for our leaders. I'm happy that here in our country, in Eswatini, in our national anthem, of course, we always pray for our leaders. We ask God to bless them. Why does God have to bless them? It's because of the things that I've already mentioned, that whatever they say or do will affect the entire nation. So if our prayers go before God, of course they will make sound decisions for the entire country. I hope you understand that, my dear Lena. So now let us continue to talk about the Passover feast that I would like for you to attend to Exodus 12, starting from verse 1 to 31, how the Israelites were protected from the angel of death that came at night because of this particular feast. So what happened during this particular feast? If you'd go down with me, you will learn that God instructed Moses to tell the Israelites to carry out certain things in order to protect themselves from this particular plague of the death of the firstborn males, both in animals and in men. So what happened was that firstly they had to choose a 1-year-old male lamb that is without blemish or that is spotless. That was the first thing that they had to do. Number 2, my dear Lena, they had to kill it and then smear some of its blood at the doorpost. As you can see here, this is a Hebrew doing what? Smearing the blood on the doorpost as instructed by God. And this blood that they had to smear at the doorpost was supposed to be a sign that inside that particular house is there are God's people, the chosen people who are the children of Israel. And also, if we go back, and then in the third thing that had to happen, it was that they had to roast the lamb and eat it in haste. They had to hurry while eating it and eat it with unleavened bread. What is unleavened bread? This is bread without yeast. And also they had to put bitter herbs. So they were not supposed to boil the meat or do any other thing to the meat, but they had to roast it. And also when they were eating it, they had to be dressed and stand with their possessions in their hands. So their loins had to be gathered, their sandals had to be on, and also their staff was supposed to be on their hand. Understand that they carry their possession while eating. What does that indicate, my dear Lena? It is an action that indicates faith. These people are getting ready to go. They believe that that particular day was a day when they were supposed to be released. So it's an act of faith that they had to carry out, my dear Lena. So now let us continue. You find that the Israelites carried out God's instruction accurate. That is found in chapter 12 verse 28. So they did as God had instructed, and the angel of death came upon Egypt, and it at midnight, and it smite all Egyptian firstborn males, my dear Lena. But of course, it passed over the homes of the Hebrews. So hence, I hope you understand why we say this is a Passover feast, because the angel of death, when it came at midnight, it passed over the homes of the Hebrews. So their lives were spared. So that you will find in details in in the same chapter 12 verse 7 to 13, because of the blood. So when the angel of death saw the blood on the doorpost, it just passed on to the next house, and if it finds the blood again, the blood saved the children of Israel. So also you learn in chapter 12 verse 14 that the Israelites were commanded to celebrate this feast annually. So they were supposed to carry on with this particular feast to just remember how they were released in bondage in the hands of Pharaoh in Egypt after being enslaved for over 400 years, my dear Lena. So now let us look together at the importance of the Passover. Please, let's go together to look at the points that I've come up with, my dear Lena. So the Passover was important in the sense that it brought divine protection. Remember, we're talking about the blood that was smeared on the doorpost. It saved them. So it brought protection towards God's people, upon God's people, as they were saved from God's wrath, which was upon all Egypt. And also, it increased the Israelites' faith in God. So such an act, knowing that God worked out some kind of protection around them in the same land, they were saved, while others died just like that. So this act increased their faith in God. They knew that this God is a God to be trusted. He's a faithful God indeed. And also it made the Israelites to accept God's sovereignty or power over their lives, as this event brought liberation after over 400 years of slavery in the foreign land, my dear Lena. So finally, it restored their identity as God's chosen people. You know, after being enslaved for over 400 years, these people were probably hopeless. They had forgotten who they were. But after this incident, after God had remembered them and brought release and brought Moses and Aaron to release them, of course, it restored their identity. They remembered who they are, that God had made a covenant with Abraham, their forefather, that he will be their God and he will look after them, my dear Lena. So now let us also continue with the story. You find that Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron. He called them and told them that all the Israelites must go without any condition. They must go with everything. Everything. I hope that this reminds you of the verse that we spoke about in chapter 6, verse 1, that God said that he will release Pharaoh will release the Israelites with his strong hand. He will be the one to tell them to go. You find that Pharaoh sent his men to make sure that all the Israelites leave Egypt immediately and with everything that belongs to them. That was the strong hand that God had spoken about in chapter 6, verse 1 of Exodus. So of course, you find that they left with their cattle, their gifts of gold and silver, as you can see in this very slide, my dear Lena. So you're probably asking yourself how these people were enslaved if they had flocks and gold and silver. But I want you to understand that during the Passover, you find that Moses and Aaron instructed the Israelites to go to their neighbors and ask for gold and silver, and God had given them favor to get anything they asked for. So you can imagine such favor. They got the favor, and they got the things from their neighbors. That is why they had such beautiful gifts. So along the way, God showed them the direction. So he went before them, providing them a pillar of cloud by the day and a pillar of fire by night. What did this pillar of cloud and pillar of fire symbolize? These symbolized God's presence. It symbolized God's presence, my dear Lena. So now let's continue. You find that Pharaoh suddenly had a second thoughts, my dear Lena. So let's start by looking at this picture. So this is the mass exodus. All of these people are leaving Egypt at the same time. So that is why it's called mass exodus. That's what exodus means. So they are leaving Egypt to Canaan, which is the land where the Israelites belong to. You can see how happy they are. They are carrying all their goodies. So you find that Pharaoh suddenly had a second thoughts about releasing the Israelites. So he sent his fierce army of over 600 chariots to pursue them, to follow them. So they went after them. And what happened, my dear Lana, is that the Israelites were terrified when they saw Pharaoh's fierce army behind them. So what happened was that they started complaining to Moses, saying, Moses, why did you bring us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness like this? But then God blocked Egyptian view with a pillar of cloud. And also God instructed Moses to extend his rod towards the sea, and the Red Sea miraculously parted, my dear Lena, something that you have never seen. Let us look at it together in this verse slide. The water miraculously parted just like that, and they walked on dry land. So there were walls on the side of the sea, and as they were walking. But what happened is that God hardened the hearts of the Egyptian army, so they decided to still pursue them after seeing that these people had a God who was fighting for them. But still they pursued them, and God decided to protect his people by causing some kind of trouble to their forces. So you find that their wheels came off while they were riding, and also they rode heavily. It wasn't easy for them to ride. And also, my dear Lena, you find that God then instructed Moses to extend his hand over the waters of the sea, and the waters came back, and all the entire Egyptian army drowned. Not one of them survived to tell the story. So the Israelites were in awe, and they believed. They started singing to God. If it was today's time, I'm sure they will be singing songs like "We Serve a Miracle Working God." But since it was that time, they sang the songs such as "Ebenezer, the Lord has led us this far. He has taken the horsemen and also the horse and throw them and cast them in the sea. So he is a mighty God." So those were the songs that they were singing after experiencing that miracle in front of them, crossing the Red Sea just like that. So they started singing and praising God. So now let us continue with the journey. So you find that the Israelites' journey in the wilderness was not an easy one. You find that it was very long and filled with many challenges. At times they will be thirsty, they will need water to drink. So their faith was tested in many ways. But God stood faithful before them. He sustained the Israelites. When they were hungry, He provided them with food. So He provided them with bread every morning, and He also provided them with quails in the evening. Let us talk about what quails are. Quails are small birds that they got from heaven. It just fell every evening. Imagine eating meat in the middle of nowhere, in the wilderness. That is what God is able to do, to provide you with anything that you might not even think you deserve in the middle of nowhere, as we can see with the Israelites. So this daily provision of bread and the quails was called manna. It was called manna, my dear Lena. So now let us move on to the last thing for today's lesson. So today, now we are looking at the lessons from the crossing of the Red Sea. So in the crossing of the Red Sea, we learn that God is all powerful. He can do the impossible. We have seen how He parted the waters of the sea. So you can imagine what He can do for you, even in your own personal situation, my dear Lena. So we have seen the power of God and His sovereignty over Israel's story through the parting of the Red Sea. Also, we learn, my dear Lena, that God is faithful to His word. He set the Israelites free from bondage after 400 years of slavery. So you can see that some of these people thought it will always be like that. It will always be the case. But God set His people free. Also, we learn that God protects His people and He fights on their behalf. As we have seen that the Israelites didn't have to do anything, but God still protected them from the Pharaoh's fierce army. And finally, we learn that when you follow God's guidance, you must not fear, but you have to trust God wholeheartedly, because God will fight for you, my dear Lena. So let us conclude today's lesson together. We have outlined the 10 plagues that God used against Egypt to release the Israelites. We also related what happened during the Passover. We also explained the importance of the Passover. We also described the mass exodus of the Israelites out of Egypt. We also explained how God provided for the Israelites in the wilderness. And finally, we explained lessons from the crossing of the Red Sea. Please let's look at the assessment together, my dear Lena. Feel free to take a picture of this assessment as we go through it. So the questions are in red and the suggested responses are the ones that are underlined in black. Explain the symbolism of the cloud during the journey from Egypt. So it symbolized God's presence. Secondly, explain the significance of the Passover feast to the Israelites. That is allocated 4 marks, my dear Lena. So let's go through the response. Firstly, it brought divine protection upon the Israelites as the blood that they were commanded to smear on their doorposts saved them from God's wrath, leading to their lives being spared. Secondly, it increased Israelites' faith in God as they experienced God's saving grace upon their lives. Moreover, it made the Israelites to accept God's sovereignty over their lives, as this event brought liberation after over 400 years of slavery in Egypt, in the foreign land. Finally, it restored their identity as God's chosen nation. And then I'd like for you to do this one all by yourself at home, my dear Lena. It says, do you think God was fair to curse all Egypt with the 10 plagues? Give reasons for your answer and show that you have thought about the different points of view. Please remember that it's an evaluation question, so come up with both views from different angles, my dear Lena. Thank you so much, my dear Lena. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. And remember, in the next lesson, we will be looking at the Sinai covenant. Please remember to keep safe at home till we meet again.
Thank you so much, Nomsa, for your lesson. We're hoping your Form 1s and your Form 2s enjoyed it. It was very, very informative, and we'll be seeing you soon, I hope.
Yes, very soon, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Form 4s, please get closer to your screens because up next is your mathematics lesson with Mr. Nhlanhla Ngomane. We'll be right back after this.
Watch the brightest talent search in the land on Eswatini TV every Sunday at 5 p.m. The Spotlight. Put me on.
Your favorite music show is back. We're bringing you the hottest music videos and live studio interviews with your favorite celebrities. We're giving you a front row seat to the latest fashion trends as well as your weekend gig guide. Join us live on social media and call in to send in your shout-outs. Catch This Weekend Eswatini every Friday at 5:30 p.m. live on Eswatini TV.
Ngabukela ke washa umkhukhu every Sunday at 3 p.m.
Welcome back to Home Study on Eswatini TV. My name is Nogwazi Dlamini. A very good afternoon to you if you have just joined us, especially if you are in Form 4, because right now we are doing mathematics for the Form 4s with Mr. Nhlanhla Ngomane, who is already with me in the studio. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Nogwazi.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, and thanks. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well, thank you. Today we're doing quadratic solutions, right?
Yeah.
What are you expecting your Form 4s to have learned by the end of the lesson?
By the end of the lesson, I expect my learner to be able to solve quadratic equations by factorization, solve quadratic equation by completing the square, and also solve quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. Ngomane. Without wasting any time, I think you may begin with your lesson.
Thank you, Nawaz. Good afternoon, my dear learner. Today's topic is quadratic solutions. So basically we will be solving quadratic equations by using a number of methods. You may be wondering, my dear learner, as to why are we learning to solve quadratic equations. Well, quadratic equations are actually used in everyday life as when calculating areas, determining product's profit, or formulating the speed of an object. Also, when you throw a ball, the trajectory of the ball is going to form a curve. So we can use a quadratic equation to tell you the position of the ball at all times. My dear learner, knowledge of the following concepts will be very important as we progress through our lesson. You should remember to solve simple linear equations, and also you should be able to you should know how to factorize
quadratic expressions, which is which we have covered in the previous lesson. So we are going to apply those concepts in our lesson today. A quadratic equation is an equation that can be written as ax squared plus bx plus c, which is equals to 0, and the a should not be equals to 0. Since if a is equals to 0, then we are going to get a linear equation. So it is ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So that's the general form of a quadratic equation. So today we'll be basically looking at the 3 basic methods for solving quadratic equations, which are factoring, completing the square, and also we'll use the quadratic formula. Let's start by looking at solving quadratics by the factorization method. So in this case, my dear learner, you have to factorize the quadratic expression on the left, which should be equated to 0. So the general form, as we have said, is ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So you have to factorize the left hand side expression, then equate it to 0. So once the expression is factorized, then we can use the zero product property. So the zero product property tells us that if we multiply two numbers together and the result is equals to 0, then we know that at least one of those numbers that we multiplied must also be equals to 0. So in general, if a times b is equals to 0, so the two numbers are a and b, if we multiply the two numbers and we get 0, it means that either the a is equals to 0 or the b is equals to 0, or both the two numbers a and b are equals to 0. So we are going to use this fact when we are solving by factorization. So remember, we factorize the expression on the left hand side, then we use the zero product property to find the solution. Let's look at the following example. Solve 6x squared plus x minus 2 is equals to 0. So we are going to solve this equation by using the factorization method. So when we factorize the left hand side, we have to find factors of AC whose sum is equals to b in the expression. So AC is going to give us 12. AC is going to give us 12. Then, AC is going to give us negative 12. Then we look for factors of negative 12 whose sum is positive 1, because the coefficient of x here is positive 1. So the factors of negative 12 whose sum is positive 1 is 4 and negative 3. Then we are going to use these two factors to decompose the middle term. So therefore, our expression will be 6x squared minus 3x plus 4x. So we have decomposed the middle term and written it in terms of these two factors. Minus 2 is equals to 0. Then we are going to group adjacent terms. So we group adjacent terms. We are going to group the adjacent terms. And then we factorize each group. So when we factorize the first group, we are going to factor out 3x. Then inside brackets, we are going to have 2x minus 1. Then in the second group, we factor out 2. Then inside brackets, we are going to be left with 2x minus 1. And then we notice that 2x minus 1 is common in both the groups. So we take it out. Then what is left will be 3x plus 2. 3x plus 2. Then now we can use the zero product property that this number times this number is equals to 0, means that either the 2x minus 1 is equals to 0 or the 3x plus 2 is equals to 0. Then we can solve the two linear equations separately. So when you solve the first one, we are going to add 1 on both sides. So when you add 1 on both sides, we will be left with 2x on the left hand side and 1 on the right hand side. Then we divide by 2. We divide by 2 on both sides. Then the 2 is going to cancel the 2 here, and then we'll be left with x. Then on the right hand side is going to be equals to 1 over 2. Then the other linear equation, we subtract 2 on both sides. We subtract 2 on both sides, then we're left with 3x on the left hand side, and it will be minus 2 on the right hand side. And then we are going to divide by 3. Divide by 3 because 3 is multiplying the x there. So when you divide by 3, it's going to cancel and be left with x. Then on the right hand side, we'll be left with negative 2 over 3. Negative 2 over 3 is our solution. So now let us look at solving quadratic by completing the square, which is our second method. Here, this method is used to solve quadratic equations by changing the form of the equation such that the left side is a perfect square trinomial. So what we'll be trying to do is we'll be trying to change the left hand side so that it becomes a perfect square trinomial. Let us look at the following example to develop this concept. The first one says solve x squared plus 6x plus 2 is equals to 0 using the method of completing the square. So the first step here is to subtract 2 on both sides. We subtract 2 on both sides. So when you subtract 2 on both sides, on the left hand side we'll be left with x squared plus 6x is equals to, on the right hand side we'll have minus 2. Then now we are going to complete the square on the left hand side. So we have x squared plus 6x. Then we are going to add a number is equals to so it's x squared plus 6x plus a number is equals to negative 2 since plus another number. So to complete the square on the left hand side, we had to add a number so that the left hand side becomes a perfect square trinomial. So how do we find the number? We take the coefficient of x, which is plus 6. We take the coefficient of x, which is plus 6, and then we divide it by 2, and then we square the result. So we take the coefficient of x, divide it by 2, and square the result. When we do that, we are going to get 3 squared, and 3 squared is going to be 9. So this is the number that we are going to add on the left hand side so that it becomes a perfect square trinomial. So we add 9. Since we have added 9 on the left hand side of the equation, we have to do the same on the right hand side so that the equation doesn't change the value. So we are going to add 9 also on the right hand side such that our equation becomes like this. So now the left hand side is a perfect square trinomial. Then the next step, we are going to factorize the left hand side and simplify the right hand side. So when you simplify the right hand side, negative 2 plus 9 is going to give us 7. And then on the right hand side, left hand side, we have to factorize this expression. When you factorize a perfect square trinomial, we are going to get a square of a binomial. When you factorize a perfect square trinomial, you get a square of a binomial. So the first term would be the square root of the first term, which is going to be x. Then the other term will be half b. So remember, half b was a positive 3, which means it's going to be plus 3. So that is the left hand side factorized. So once we factorize the left hand side, the next step is to solve for x. So we can see that the left hand side has been squared. So to remove the square, we are going to square root. So we square root on both sides. So when we take the square root of a constant, we get two solutions, a positive one and a negative one. We get two solutions, a positive one and a negative one. Then on the left hand side, the square is going to cancel, the square root is going to cancel the square, and we'll be left with x plus 3 is equals to plus or minus the square root of 7. Then to solve for x, we are going to subtract 3 on both sides. Subtract 3 on both sides. So when you subtract 3 on both sides, on the left hand side, we'd be left with x is equals to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 7. Then to get our solutions, is going to be x is equals to negative 3. Then we take the positive square root plus root 7. Then to get the other solution, it is going to be negative 3. Then we take the negative square root. So it's negative 3 minus root 7. Then we are going to punch this in our calculator. We are going to get this value, which when we round to 3 significant figures is going to give us negative 0.354. Then the other solution, we punch this on a calculator. We are going to get this value. Then when we round to 3 significant figures, we get negative 5.65. Now let us look at the next example. Solve 2x squared minus 10x minus 3 is equals to 0. We are going to use the same method, which is completing the square. So the first step, we transpose the 3 to the right hand side. So how do we transpose the 3? We add 3 on both sides. We add 3 on both sides, and when we do that, we are going on the left hand side to be left with 2x squared minus 10x is equals to positive 3. Now, in order to complete the square, always make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. The coefficient of x squared is 1. Since in our example it is not 1, then we have to divide by whatever is multiplying the x squared. So in this case, it is multiplied by 2. So we are going to divide by 2 right across. Divide by 2 right across, so that the coefficient of x squared is 1. So when you divide by 2 right across, we are going to get this equation. X squared minus 5x is equals to 3 over 2. Now we have to complete the square on the left hand side. We have to complete the square on the left hand side. So how do we complete the square? We have to add a number on both sides, so that the left hand side is a perfect square. So the number we get by dividing the coefficient of x, which is the middle term, by 2. So it's going to be negative 10 over 2. Then we square. So that is going to be I'm sorry, it's not negative 2, but it is negative 5. So it's negative 5 over 2. Then we square. So that is going to give us 25 over 4. That is 25 over 4. So we are going to add 25 over 4 on both sides. So once we've done that, then the left hand side becomes a perfect square trinomial. Then you factorize the left hand side, and also you simplify the right hand side. When you simplify the right hand side, you are going to get this value. And when you factorize the left hand side, which is a perfect square trinomial, then you are going to get a square of a binomial. You are going to get a square of a binomial. So the first term is the square root of x squared, which is x. Then the other term is a half. It's half the coefficient of x, which is going to be negative 5 over 2. Then then we proceed to solve for x. Since it has been square, we find the square root on both sides. So we take the square root on both sides, and if we take the square root of a constant, then it's going to be which is going to give us two values, a positive and a negative one. So the square root on the left hand side is going to cancel the square and be left with this expression is equals to the right hand side. Then we continue with our solutions. Then we have to solve for x. So how do we solve for x now? We add 5 over 2 on both sides. We add 5 over 2 on both sides. Then the left hand side will be left with x is equals to this value. Then we punch this in our calculator. Make sure that you put brackets on the constant inside the square root so that you get the correct solution. Then when you punch this on our calculator, we are going to get this value. Then to get the other root, we use the negative square root, which is going to be 5 over 2 minus root 31 over 4. Then you punch this on a calculator, you are going to get this value, which will round off to 3 significant figures as negative 0.284. And on the other solution, when you round to 3 significant figures, you are going to get 5.28. So the method of completing the square is most suitable when the coefficient of x is an even number. The coefficient of x, which is the middle term, is an even number, and the coefficient of x squared is 1. So the method of completing the square is more suitable in that case. In summary, this is the summary of the steps that you can use when completing the square. They are just basically 5 steps. So when completing a square, we want to get to this situation where we have a square of a binomial on the left hand side is equals to a constant, which can then be solved easily. Then now let us look at the last method of solving quadratic equation. That is by using the quadratic formula. So for a quadratic equation of this form, the solutions are given by the formula x is equals to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is important. All over 2a. So this is the quadratic formula. So you can find the quadratic formula by completing a square on a general equation, on a general quadratic equation. So it is going to give you the formula for finding the solution of quadratic equation. So now let us look at the following examples. Solve 2x squared minus 3x minus 4. So here the general form is ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So what we have to do is we have to find the value of a, the value of b, and the value of c, and then substitute it in our formula. So the value of a is the coefficient of x squared, which is equals to 2. The value of b is the coefficient of x, which is equals to negative 3. The value of c is a constant term, which is negative 4 in our case. Then we substitute this on this formula. When we substitute it, negative b is negative of negative 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so it's going to be negative 3 squared, minus then we open bracket 4 times our a times our c, all over 2 times a. Then we evaluate what is inside the square root. That is going to give us 41. Then 2 times 2 is going to give us 4. Then negative of negative 3 is going to give us positive 4. Remember, it's all over 4. Then to get our two solutions, it's going to say 3. Then we take the positive square root plus root 41 over 4. Or the other root is going to be 3. We take the negative square root minus root 41 over 4. Then we punch this in our calculator. It's going to be 3 plus root 41. Then you say equal. Then you divide that answer by 4 to get this value, which rounds off to 2.3 5 to 3 significance. Then you do the same on the other solution, which is going to give us negative 0.351. Let us look at the other example. In this example, say 5x squared minus 5x minus x squared is equals to negative 2. So in this case, the equation is not of the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So we have first to rearrange so that it is of that form. So how do we do that? We add the 2. We add the 2 on both sides. So when we add the 2 on both sides, then the right hand side will be equals to 0. Then the left hand side will be negative x squared plus 5x plus 2. Then once it is of this form, then we can find the value of a, the value of b, and the value of c, and then substitute on the formula. So in our case, the value of a is this, it's negative 1, the value of b is 5, and the value of c is 2. Then we substitute it on our formula. We are going to get this. Then we evaluate what is inside the square root. We get negative 3. Then negative of 5 is going to be negative 5. Then just like we did in the previous example, to get the two solutions, we take the positive square root. Then to get the other solution, we take the negative square root. Then we punch that in our calculator. We are going to get these values. So in summary, in the quadratic formula, the value, the expression b squared minus 4ac is called the discriminant. This tells us about the nature of our solutions. So if the discriminant is positive, then we are going to get 2 roots. If the discriminant is 0, then we are going to get 1 repeated root. And if the discriminant is negative, we'll get 0 solutions. So we won't have solutions. And then we can apply this on some problems. Say the cost of a biscuit is X cents. The cost of cake is X plus 3 cents. The number of biscuits that I can buy for 72 cents is 2 more than the number of cakes she can buy for the same amount. So show that this is equals to 0. So what we can do is we can find the number of biscuits that you can buy for 72 cents, which is 72 over X. And the number of cakes that you can buy, which will be 72 over X plus 3. So this is the number of biscuits, this is the number of cakes. So we are also told that the number of biscuits that you can buy is 2 more than the number of cakes, which is going to be X plus 2. So now the number of biscuits is 72 over X. The number of cakes is, the number of biscuits can also be expressed as the number of cakes plus 2. So then we equate the two, the number of biscuits given by this expression and the number of biscuits given by that expression. So our equation will be this is equals to that. Then we multiply by the LCM to remove the fraction, which is going to be x onto x plus 3, which is going to give us this. Then expanding the bracket, we are going to get this expression. Then transposing, since we have 72x on both sides, going to cancel, and it will be left with this on the left hand side. Then on the right hand side is going to be 216. Subtracting it is going to give us this value, and then you divide by 2, which is going to be this value as shown. My dear learner at home, this brings us to the end of our lesson for the day. I hope you have enjoyed it, the lesson, and you have benefited from what was being taught. Back to you, Nwazi.
Thank you so much, most definitely. We're hoping the Form 4s actually enjoyed it and did benefit from that lesson. Thank you so much, Mr. Ngomane. We'll be seeing you soon, I hope.
I hope so.
Thank you so much. Form 4s, please do not go anywhere. Up next is your chemistry lesson with Ms. Tobile Mahengela. We'll be right back after this.
Hey girlfriend, call me. Hey, my name is Gigi Callahan. And Gigi's at the movie store. I haven't seen my life. I came here to say hello, everyone. This who I am. But let's go.
You ain't on my swag radar.
Very warm welcome back to Eswatini TV. You are still tuned into your favorite tele-education program, Home Study. My name is Nogwazila Mini, and right now we are doing chemistry for the Form 4s with Tobile Mahengela, who is already with me in the studio. Good afternoon, Tobile.
Afternoon, Sissy.
How are you today?
Great, actually.
You're great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. Today, I understand we're doing the periodic table.
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right. What are you expecting your Form 4s to have learned by the end of the lesson?
By the end of today's lesson, we expect that the learners should be able to describe the periodic table as a method of classifying elements and its use in predicting properties of elements. Explain for the first 20 elements the basis of the periodic table using the proton number and simple structure of atoms. We also expect them to be able to describe the relationship between the period number and the number of shells. Describe the trend from metallic to non-metallic character across the period. And lastly, they should be able to identify alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, halogens, as well as noble gases.
All right, thank you so much for that, Form 4s. I hope you are ready for your lesson. Without wasting any time, Tobile, you may please begin with your lesson.
Thank you, Sissy. So the importance of this lesson, dear learner, is that we are well versed with elements. We use them in our daily life. For instance, we use them as supplements or the use of chlorine in water purification. Just as at home, you may want to sort your clothes according to trousers, t-shirts, jerseys for easy access. Was saying elements found on Earth have also been systematically classified in the periodic table to help us easily understand how they relate as well as react with one another. The periodic table is a method of classifying all known elements in the universe in terms or else in the order of their proton numbers as well as chemical properties. This was first proposed by Dmitry Mendeleev long time ago, about 150 years ago, but that is not to suggest that if there are any new elements found, this periodic table will not be amended. This is how it would appear, especially when you're being assessed through a test or else through an exam situation. So you should be well versed with how the setup is. Let's start with an element, seeing as this is the basis of the classification. We're saying an element, dear learner, is a substance made up of only one kind of an atom, and this cannot be broken down to simpler substances by chemical means. In the periodic table, then, you will find these elements represented by a shorthand notation, whereby this X, let's take for instance, you're talking about lithium, will be Li, and then you'll have the smaller value, which we refer to as the proton number. You'll also have the larger value, which we refer to as the nucleon number, and you may see in the brackets there that it says this comprises of Z as well as N, where N is our neutron number, dear learner. This element, having said that it's made up of only one type of an atom is therefore made up of subatomic particles. Of note is the protons, and protons, they are positively charged and they reside in the nucleus. You also have neutrons, which are not charged, but they are also found in the nucleus, dear learner. Electrons are negatively charged and are orbiting around the shells. As you may see, these are our electrons. They are found around in what is called shells, dear learner. Now let us talk about the nucleon number, which we can also denote as A. This refers to the number of protons as well as neutrons that are found inside the nucleus. We then have the proton number, which we denote as Z. This refers to the number of protons. Please note that it's only the protons that are referred to as the proton number, and these are also found in the nucleus. What is mainly important to note is that the number of protons is equal to the number of electrons. There is no way in which we can just find the number of electrons written in the periodic table. You need to infer this. To get the number of neutrons, we therefore use this formula, whereby N, remember, represents the number of neutrons, and we've already said A is the nucleon number. This nucleon number will therefore subtract Z, which is the proton number, dear learner. Let's try this example. Please bring closer your periodic table. Given that we have phosphorus, and you may note that it has this larger value, which we have already termed as the nucleon number, and this 15, which is the proton number. What information can you deduce from just simply looking at this, dear learner? The response is that this is phosphorus with a proton number of 15 and a nucleon number of 31. We can therefore deduce that it has 15 protons, hence 15 electrons. To get the number of neutrons, we therefore have to go back to our formula, which I showed you just previously, where we'll say A minus Z, and then we get a 16. Let us do this short exercise, and again we are referring to the periodic table, so please use the one which you have. It says write beside each letter from A to H the correct symbol or number. We are first told of an element Li, and if you look at your periodic table, you'll see that Li is lithium. The only information you can see here is the 7, which has been written here, but judging from your periodic table, you will see that Li has a 7 and a 3. Now let us go over. What is the proton number? Remember, the proton number is the smaller value. Hence, you will see from the periodic table that this is 3, dear learner. The nucleon number we've already been given. The next question is, what are the number of electrons that are here in lithium? Judging from the proton number, and we have already said the number of protons equals the number of electrons, so the answer will be 3 as well. What is the number of protons? Remember, we said the proton number gives us the number of protons. Hence, we expect this to also be 3. Now, to get the number of neutrons, remember, it's A minus Z. And so it will be 7 minus 3, so that we get a 4. Now, let us look at the second element. We are not told what element this is, but judging from what we've been given, you can see that it has a nucleon number of 56. Now, please refer to your periodic table, dear learner. And I hope that you can see that the elements found there is ion, which we represent with a capital letter F and a small letter E. What is the proton number of ion, therefore? That is we'll find that from the smaller value, dear learner. I hope you can see from your periodic table that you have a 56 and a 26. Hence, our proton number will be 26. The number of electrons, we've been told that are 26 as well. The number of protons, then, what will be the number of protons? Remember, if we've already found that the proton number is 26, this therefore means the number of protons is 26 as well. What is the number of neutrons then? Remember, we go back to A minus Z, whereby we'll have a 56 minus 26 to get a 30, dear learner. Now let us proceed. We have this setup of a periodic table whereby we say the elements are arranged in form of groups and periods in order of increasing proton number. The vertical columns that is going down, these are called the groups, and of note we have about 8 groups. And then the horizontal rows, this gives us the periods, whereby currently we have about 7 periods, dear learner. Today we are mainly focusing on periodic trends, whereby we say this involves moving across a period. Remember, the period is when you move horizontally. We observe certain characteristic patterns, and these are important, Yelena, because they can be used to predict properties of any given element. As mentioned before in our objectives, we said that we'll only be focusing on the first 20 elements for our syllabus. Hence, judging from the periodic table which you have in front of you, I expect you to see that in period 1, we only have hydrogen and helium. In period 2, we have lithium moving horizontally up until neon. And in period 3, there is sodium up to argon. In period 4, we then have potassium and calcium only. And by saying only, I do not mean that's the end of the periodic table. I just mean our first 20 elements and the. Now let us do a short exercise also involving our periodic table. So we're supposed to study period 2. It says, what do you note about the proton numbers? Remember, the proton number is Z, the one which is the smaller value, from lithium up to neon. I hope that you note that as you look at the smaller values, you will see them increasing by 1. For instance, with lithium, it has a 3 as a proton number. Beryllium has 4. We have boron with the 5. We have carbon with the 6. You have nitrogen with the 7. You have oxygen with an 8. You have fluorine with a 9. And lastly, there is neon with a 10. If you can just compare the nucleon numbers, maybe of boron, I think you can note that the nucleon number of boron is 11, of carbon is 12, of nitrogen is 14. Now this is where the problem comes, because there's no clear-cut sequencing here. There's one difference between boron and carbon, and then there's a difference of 2 between carbon and nitrogen, and hence why the proton number was used, my dear learner. This is now our periodic table again. The period number is equal to the number of shells for each atom, and as you move down, as you move through the group, remember the group is going down, the period is going sideways, horizontally. Now let us just look at this few elements. We have lithium with 3 electrons in and remember the rules on the electron distribution. The first shell should always be filled by a maximum of 2, and then the other shells you can then fill them up with 8. So with the 3 that we have, it means we'll have the 2 electrons in the first shell, and then we'll be left with 1, which will then be placed in the second shell. For sodium, we have 11. 2 will place in the first shell, 8 will place in the second, and the third one will place in the last. Remember, the last shell is referred to as the valency shell. Hence, the electrons that are found there are also called the valency electrons. If we have potassium then, with 19 electrons, what will be the configuration? We expect that the first shell will have 2 as per the rule, and then we put an 8 in the second, giving us a total of 10. We're still left with 9. We put the 8. We have 18 now. And then the last one will be N1. And this one suggests that this is why these are placed in group 1. Because we say that you are placed in a group because of your valency electron. And hence you'll also have the same chemical properties as the members of the same group. Now let us look at this how we can do electron distribution while using the second period here, whereby we have lithium, and you can see that in lithium we have already placed the 2 electrons, and the third one is in the second shell. For carbon, which has 6, the first 2 were in the first one, and then the 4 were in the last one, which is the second one. And then rushing to neon, which has 10 electrons, the first 2 were placed in the first shell, and the second one had an 8 I hope you note that for the first time now, we're seeing 2 shells which are full. You can also write this in terms of an electronic configuration, whereby we'd say 2, 1, telling you that we have 2 shells. The first one has 2 electrons, the second one has 1, and here we can have in 2, 8, telling you that the first shell has 2 electrons and the second one has 8. Please note that all these elements have only 2 shells, hence this is why we say they are in period 2, dear learner. Let's do this exercise. Please bring your periodic table closer to you. So this is based on K, which is potassium. And I hope you note that when you're looking through it, you will see that potassium has a 39 and a 19. Now the question says, what is the proton number? I hope you can note that we say the smaller value is the proton number. Hence, the answer is 19, dear learner. What is the nucleon number? We said this is the larger value. Hence, the answer is 39. How many protons, electrons, and neutrons does this have? I hope you'll remember that the proton number gives us the number of electrons. Hence, we have a 19. And we said by knowing the number of protons, you therefore also know the number of electrons. Hence, electrons are also 19. And to get neutrons, we said it's A minus Z. So it will be 39 minus 19, giving us a 20, dear learner. Now, the next question says, let us draw an electronic structure. So this is how our electronic structure would look like. The first shell has 2. And then the next shell, which is the second one, has 8 together with the third one. But the last one, which is the fourth, only has 1. We can also show this in terms of the electronic configuration. So judging from this, therefore, we can be able to answer the last question, which says, in what period and group is potassium placed? Potassium is in group 1. How can we tell? Because it has 1 as its valency electron. It's in period 4. How can we tell? Because it had 4 shells, dear learner. Now we say the way that elements are placed in a period also means the metallic character decreases across the period and the non-metallic character increases. What do we mean? Let's take for instance this period 3, whereby we say sodium, magnesium, as well as aluminium are metals. We then have this staircase, dear learner, whereby we find metalloids, and this is the line that basically divides metals from non-metals. If we continue with our period 3, you will note that silicon is now a metalloid, meaning it possesses both properties of a metal and a non-metal. We then have phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, and argon being non-metals, dear learner. To continue, having said that this classification will place this according to groups and periods, we note that there are important groups. For instance, we have group 1, which is made up of alkali metals. We have group 2, which is made up of alkaline earth metals. If it's in group 2, remember, it means it has a valency electron of 2. We then have transition metals, which tend to have a variable valency. After that, we have metalloids, which are usually placed on both sides of the staircase. And then we have halogens, which are in group 7. And lastly, the group which has only gases referred to as noble gases, that is group 8. Let us do this practice question, dear learner. For each of the following, give the name of an element from period 2, that is lithium to neon, which matches the description. Elements may be used once, more than once, or not at all. So the first question says, an element which is a gas at room temperature and pressure. We are saying the answer to that can be any gas that appears there. We can have nitrogen, we can have oxygen, we can have fluorine, we can even have neon. They are all gases at room temperature. Give an element that is a product of photosynthesis. I'm sure by now we know that we've been doing that since primary. So this will be oxygen. An element that makes up approximately 78%. We learned this at junior level. This is nitrogen, makes up the bulk of air. An element which has atoms with a full outer shell. This is found only in group 8. And the only element that resides in group 8 is neon. An element that reacts vigorously with cold water. You will do this thoroughly in the next lesson. This will be a group 1 element, hence it's lithium. A soft metallic element which is stored in oil. These are also group 1, hence it's lithium. An element in group 7, in our case, this is fluorine. In summary, dear learner, we are saying the periodic table is a classification of elements according to their proton numbers. Horizontal rows are called periods, and then the vertical columns are referred to as the groups. The period number is equal to the number of shells. The metallic nature decreases across a period, meaning the more you move to the right, the more they become non-metallic. And lastly, we are saying from the far left of a period, we have alkali metals, followed by alkaline earth metals, followed by transition metals, followed by metalloids, then halogens, and lastly, we have noble gases on the far right. Thank you, dear listener. I hope you enjoyed our lesson. And I'd like to say good luck to our Form 5s who just started writing our continuous exam today. So we're rooting for you.
Thank you so much, Tobile, for that. We're hoping to be seeing you very, very soon. We're hoping that your Form 4s actually enjoyed the lesson. And of course, good luck to the Form 5s.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We're hoping. Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
All right, viewers at home, that was the last lesson for today. We're hoping that you had a wonderful day like we all did, and that you are looking forward to tomorrow's lessons, which is a Tuesday afternoon. And this is what your Tuesday afternoon looks like. From 2 p.m. until 2:30 p.m. we have the grade 1 and 2 lesson, which is Eswatini. From 2:30 p.m. until 3 p.m. we have English language for the grades 3 and 4. From 3 p.m. until 3:30 p.m. we have social studies for grades 5 and 6. From 3:30 p.m. until 4 p.m. we have literature for the Form 1s and 2s. From 4 p.m. until 4:30 p.m. we have Eswatini for the Form 4s. And the last lesson for tomorrow is from 4:30 p.m. until 5 p.m. and it's English language for the Form 4s. A reminder, of course, about our social media platforms. We are live every day, Monday to Friday, from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. on YouTube and on Facebook, so you guys can join us on those platforms. And please do not forget to click on that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, Eswatini TV, and search for Home Study to get any notifications of when we are live. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, before I forget, a reminder about our WhatsApp number that you guys can use to text us any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for joining us from me and the team. See you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bye.